All right, Kenneth, our next call has a question directed at you. Wants to ask Kenneth
I'm
of
not
any
taking
evidence
questions right now. I'm not. No questions.
Charismatic Catholic. You're on with Kenneth and Dan. How are you?
Yeah.
Doing good. How about you guys?
Good.
Good.
I'm doing good. So, what do you got for us today?
Very cool. Yeah. Just wanted to call in and ask Kenneth. It might seem like, I guess, like maybe it's like a boring question, but I was wondering, Kenneth, for someone like you, like in your position, is there at this point, would you say there's anything that, I guess, like any experience or like any evidence that, at least in theory, you could say, like, if I was presented with that, I think I'd be convinced that Christianity is true.
Yeah. There has to be. I'm not sure what that would look like. I'm thinking in terms of maybe some sort of contemporary historical document, or a series of documents being discovered could help with some of the stuff. The tough thing is that so much of Christianity is just like unfalsifiable claims. So things like the resurrection, the body of evidence that's available right now is so bad, and I don't know what could really redeem it, so to speak. But yeah, in terms of personal experience, I don't know what that would look like either, because I've talked about this a bunch. That I've been asked, what would I do if I had like a Damascus Road type of experience where like God appeared to me. I'd be worried about my mental health. I would
check to see if someone put something in your drink, kind of a thing, right?
Maybe, or just I wouldn't. I could be convinced by an experience, but that wouldn't be a good reason for anyone else to share in my belief. And if I did become convinced by an experience, I think that would, at somewhere in the causal chain there would have been a breakdown in my skepticism. So my skepticism may sort of inoculate me from the personal experience conversion thing at this stage. So my answer is yes, but I don't know what it would look like.
Okay. Would you say like if it was something like to where like the road on Damascus moment, say like if it's something that you wouldn't necessarily like expect other people, or first thing you would do is like maybe question like, well, is this aliens? Is this my mental state? And you wouldn't expect other people to kind of share in that, possibility. Would you say like that probably isn't good evidence then, right?
No. And because, so I've been spreading around a very broad definition of evidence when I talk to people. So when I use the word evidence, I'm referring to literally anything that can be used to demonstrate a claim is true. So if the claim is God is real, and the evidence is I saw something that I don't understand that I think I'm attributing to a God, or I'm convinced a God has inspired me or spoken to me, I don't even draw a distinction between good evidence and bad evidence. I would just say it's not evidence because it can't be used to demonstrate the truth of the claim.
So if you were to have something that was like presented to you that you would qualify as evidence, would that be like, would you be full stop there? Would that be it? Or would you have to keep, I guess, like looking for more to stack onto it, if you kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Ethan and I talked about this one time because there are gradations of evidence, right? So if the claim is Ethan killed a guy, then I don't know how to put Ethan in these as the murderer guy. But okay,
he's here.
So Ethan,
why not?
Ethan brutally murdered some innocent guy, and we've got evidence. We've got a stack of evidence. So we've got Ethan's car spotted by someone at the crime scene around the time of the crime. That is evidence. That's something that could be used to demonstrate that the claim is true. If we had video footage of Ethan walking into the victim's home right before he was killed and then walking out and no one else has been in the house, that's evidence. That is better evidence. If we've got Ethan's semen all over the dead body.
Thanks, Kenneth.
Wow, we went there. We just straight up went there. Yeah, you did.
Then I don't know if that's, I mean, that's not necessarily evidence of a murder. I mean,
It was evidence
I don't know
that he
what's
was
going
there.
on. He was there.
was there.
He was certainly there.
Fuck?
That is evidence that at some point in time, Ethan was there.
So in that situation though, Kenneth, would you consider an eyewitness testimony of Ethan brutally murdering the person evidence?
Yes.
Okay. So then what do you take with people who have like life after death experiences and that sort of thing, and they're giving an eyewitness testimony of what they think is like, you would consider that evidence or you would not consider that evidence?
Well, it's evidence, but it's really, really bad evidence.
I
In fact,
don't disagree with the fact
Yeah.
that I mean, especially in a court of law, like eyewitness testimony is not nearly as strong of evidence as a lot of people assume that it is. But
well, and
So,
eyewitness
like,
testimony
give-
is the number one source of convictions that are then later overturned.
right.
If you look
Totally
at like,
agree.
you know,
Totally
the
agree.
Innocence
But-
Project,
But
most
is it
of the other
evidence or is it
exonerated.
not evidence though? That's kind of like my
it's
Like,
evidence,
okay, to
Yeah.
kinda
but it's
give you an
really
example
bad
here.
evidence.
If, like, you know those people that say they put, like, in surgery, there was a note
Yeah.
on top of the surgeon lights and they
Mhm.
saw what the note said.
Yeah.
What would that be classified as evidence for, like, God or a soul, or like what would you take that as?
So no, I would say that from the little in the world of neuroscience that I've looked at with respect to NDEs, it seems to be that when the brain is in an oxygen deprived state or just a vulnerable state, period, wonky things happen. And then when people are coming to, you've got an experience, you've got different parts of the brain firing. So you've got memory coming into play, interpreting an experience. So when someone says, I was on the table and I had this experience, this out of body experience, or being drawn toward a light, or seeing my dead relative, or being told something that I couldn't have possibly known otherwise, this is evidence of an experience. Their subjective experience happened to them. But in terms of that evidence, that subjective experience then being used to demonstrate another claim being true, they had this experience because fill in the blank. All of your work is still ahead of you, in my view. So if someone was to say this is evidence of a soul, how do you get there? You had an experience, but how do you tie X to Z here? You know, I mean, it's always a non sequitur. And it's interesting too to note that people who have NDEs and out of body experiences, that they tend to be sort of culturally dependent. So people who are raised in different religious experiences see different gods. You know, people see different. Jesus looks different to different people. You know, people who are raised in Islam see different things in their NDEs. So it's not like these are conclusive in any sense, pointing toward a certain cause. Other than the common denominator is brains.
Dan, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on near-death experiences?
I think they're definitely evidence of the fact that people experience and see something. And I think some people probably are experiencing something that's literally out of this world. And some of them are probably just high as a kite or deprived from oxygen.
I was just
whether
gonna ask,
or
like,
not, I mean, I'm in no position to make a judgment call on which ones are which. Like I'm not going to rule out the possibility at all completely of the fact that there are things outside of our tangible known world and universe that people are able to get connected with in some way, shape, or form, and that there's I don't know, I think there's something to be said about the fact that it's something that hasn't gone away after all of this scientific discovery still. The fact that it still persists, even amongst, you know, not just like third world countries where, you know, the modern world doesn't exist in all of its amazing forms, you know. You've still got people who are in the medical world and advancing in science and medicine who still have a belief in the afterlife or a belief in a higher power of some kind. So people are a hell of a lot smarter than me, still believing in that stuff. So yeah, I'm not going to rule it out and say it's absolutely not, you know. I think it very well could be, but in no way am I going to make a judgment on which ones are which.
Right.
So
I think that's probably. Can I just comment on that?
Oh,
Ethan, real
please
quick?
go ahead.
go ahead, man.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think that's probably like. I think it would just kind of be sort of, in my mind, it might be a little bit reckless to say like, because something, you know, we know that people lie, right? We know that people have these, you know, experiences because of their, you know, even if it wasn't a lie, it was something like with their brain, a chemical reaction that happened at a certain time. There's all these different accounts, right? But I think it might be a little reckless to say like, because something is true of these particulars, it's therefore true of, you know, the aggregate as a whole, right? Like every case within that category is therefore the same, which is why I kind of look at, you know, near-death experiences as something that's like, you know, I think it can be really powerful evidence, but it's not something that I think that you would, you know, have to rest your case on, if that makes sense.
Help me out. How is it evidence? I mean, like, let's say for the sake of argument that every single human being right before they die has the subjective experience of being drawn down a tunnel of white light, and at the end of it, they see Jesus. What does that tell us about why they have the experience, or what that experience is evidence for?
Well, I think it would be evidence for, if it's when you say Jesus, I'm assuming you're meaning like our typical understanding of the person of Jesus as a human and also as part of the Trinity. So I think it would tell us that, you know, it would tell this person who would experience that, like, hey, this, you know, this historical figure who was a man who was also more like, this is clearly evidence that, you know, he was around. His claim, you know, he made this claim, this pretty monumental claim, right? About, he wasn't just saying he was a preacher and
but I'm asking you how.
Yeah.
How do you make the connection is what I'm asking you. How is the one thing evidence of the other thing?
I guess when you say how do you make the connection, it's by the experience that the person has.
So a person has a subjective experience of seeing something. How is that subjective experience of them seeing something evidence of something else? How do you attribute causality to their experience?
Because the thing that they're seeing is presumably going to be the conclusion of a claim that somebody else has made, right? So if
I don't know. How do you know? How would you? But hang on. I don't know, and I don't think you do either, unless I'm missing something.
When you say you don't know if I do either, like, what do you mean by that?
You asked a question. And you were doing the thing where, you know, it's like a rhetorical question. You were saying, well, presumably they're seeing X as a result of Y, and then you kept going. But I don't know why they're seeing what they're seeing. That's the entire question.
Well, yeah, I'm saying that like I'm not denying that it could be any number of things. Like I started with that. Like, you know, we know that, you know, a chemical reaction from a surgery or you know, it could be any number of things that's the result of that.
Right. So now
I'm
you're
just
coming with
saying
me.
that I
So
don't
that's what
think
I'm
you
saying. I'm saying if we've got a phenomena, people have a subjective experience, and we know that people's subjective experiences can be caused by a multitude of different things, and we don't know what is causing this subjective experience of an NDE, then how is that subjective experience evidence for something?
Because if somebody is going to make the claim, right, that if someone's going to make the claim that Jesus was more than just a man, that he lived, he died, but he rose again, he was a member of the Trinity, and you know, he is God in the flesh, and then someone has an experience where they directly see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't say, then even if it's something, even if it's part of an aggregate to where there's all these other possibilities that would have caused that, right? Even if they're part of the aggregate, we cannot definitively say that therefore this person's subjective experience is part of the rest of those, you know, as false as the rest of those cases, the rest of those particulars.
Correct. We have no idea what is causing their experience. Right?
Well, presumably they're dying. Presumably they're on the verge of dying. That's one thing that's causing their experience.
Sure. Does everyone who is near death have an NDE like this?
I don't know. I mean,
no is the answer.
I could say I am.
The answer is no.
I imagine. Well, how can we definitively make that claim?
Because people have the experience of being near death and don't report having these experiences.
What's to say they just don't remember the experience?
What's to say the people who have the experiences aren't misremembering the experience they had?
Right.
So either okay. So not to
like
let me
go ahead.
Jump in here. Okay, so
the whole thing.
This is why these kind of like, I get so bored of these conversations. No offense to either of you, but it always ends up going to the same result of, well, can you prove this as evidence for your position? Well, I don't have concrete evidence of it. Well, then that means it's not real. And then other people going, well,
no,
you
it's not.
can't prove that it's not evidence of it not being that way. And so thus I'm assuming that it is real. And it's like,
that's not it. I'm not assuming that it's not real. I'm saying if you cannot account for how something is evidence of something, then you don't get to claim it as evidence for something. It's dishonest. I'm in the position of I don't know what's causing
I understand
the
that point completely. Kenneth. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the main point that the caller was trying to make here after my last comment was that it's at the very least rude to rule it out as a possibility when someone says this is what I believe based on my experience. Like, you can't argue against it, true, because it's their experience, right? But to say no, you didn't have that experience as evidence of the afterlife, when it's like, well, no, I did, and then you try.
But no one's done that, so we can take that straw man and just put it right to the side.
Right. I hope so.
That hasn't been what's been happening here. But if someone's going to say I had an experience, therefore my experience is evidence for God or whatever, it could be I encountered a invisible dragon on my deathbed and then I came back, therefore there's a invisible dragon waiting for me in the afterlife, and that's evidence
right there.
It's not that is not a straw man. That's the same thing, because people see all different stuff with their NDEs.
Right. And what my point is that I'm trying to make here, dude, is that if they're trying to say this is evidence for why you should believe in God, that's one thing. But if they're saying this is why I believe in the afterlife, like, what are you going to say to that?
If they're saying this is why I believe, then I'm stuck at you believe for a reason that can't be used to demonstrate that what you believe is true.
It's experiential and it's personal, and then you
Right.
can't take that away from them, right?
But that's not what I'm saying. So
Right.
if they're saying, when we're talking about evidence, something being evidence that a claim is true. So I had an NDE, and that is evidence that the claim God exists. Or, I mean, we were talking about Jesus a minute ago, and all the claims about
Right.
Jesus and being part of the Trinity and all this stuff. Therefore, someone has an NDE and they see Jesus, therefore Jesus exists. That's not kosher. If someone says, I had an NDE and I saw what I think is Jesus, therefore I believe that I saw Jesus. Well, okay, you believe that you saw Jesus, but you don't have
for that individual trying to piece together all of the data, all of the experiential stuff, all of the information that they have in their life, that is evidence to them because it's an experience that they themselves had personally, right?
clarify
So
something
it may
real
not be
quick?
evidence for you, but for
but it's-
them and their
but
life
the
and their
thing is,
belief, it is evidence.
It's not evidence for them. So if we're talking about evidence as being something that can be used to demonstrate a claim is true, it's true they had an experience and they saw something. But the instant that they go, I saw something because of X, Y, and Z, and make those leaps and those assumptions, they have now left the domain of evidence and entered the domain of faith.
Right. But then could you not also make the same claim about what you're using to excuse away their experience?
I'm not excusing away their experience at all. I'm acknowledging that they had an experience. And I know as much about what caused it as they do. I'm just being honest about it.
Right, but if they're drawing a conclusion that's different than yours, I have to attribute it to the fact that they had the experience and you didn't, dude.
But what's my conclusion?
You didn't have the experience, so you don't know. That's the conclusion.
No,
right?
My conclusion is not. My conclusion is I don't know, but me having the experience has nothing to do with it. I don't know what caused their experience. It has nothing to do with it.
You couldn't possibly make the same kind of claim having not had that experience, though, dude. Like, how do you do that?
That's not true. It's irrelevant who's had the experience. If someone sees something, okay, and it's not something that we can test in any way, but they saw what they saw, right? And they're telling me that. I take them at their word. They saw what they saw, and that's fine. But I don't have any idea what caused their experience. It could have been brain chemistry. It could have been Jesus. It could have been a pranking demon.
Agree.
I have no idea what caused
it.
And neither do they.
And if they draw a conclusion that it was one thing rather than the other,
then they're making a mistake.
Why do you fault them for that?
Because I care about whether or not my beliefs are true. You see, when people come to conclusions, when people form beliefs,
I get that.
Those beliefs inform their actions. Their actions have consequences.
So when I just said if they come to the conclusion of one thing instead of the other, you assumed that I'm saying one thing being there's an afterlife.
No, I'm not.
Actually wasn't. What if they come to the conclusion that it wasn't an afterlife? That was just chemistry in their brain.
Whatever conclusion they come to is irrelevant. Even if they come to the conclusion it's just brain chemistry, how do they know that?
So you're saying they shouldn't come to a conclusion?
Yes, that's the honest thing to do. Okay. Because your NDE isn't evidence of shit other than your own subjective experience. You had a subjective experience, full stop.
And it can be extremely powerful though, dude. So how does that, like, people's personal experiences matter? Their testimony can matter, right?
Yes.
So by saying that they shouldn't draw any conclusions from it, I feel like you're saying that it doesn't matter.
I didn't say they shouldn't draw any conclusions.
It doesn't matter.
I didn't say they shouldn't draw any conclusions. They should draw the conclusions that they can based on evidence. They should draw conclusions based on what they can demonstrate to be true. They should take as few leaps as possible. Because as soon as you enter the domain of faith and you start believing stuff without evidence, you're in trouble.
Sorry to jump in.
We do that every day, though, don't we, Kenneth? We demonstrate a trust to people every day without necessarily
trust and faith.
Okay, well, there's a conversation we could go around in circles on.
All right, so let's put charismatic Catholic. You wanted to, because we've got a few more callers. You wanted to clarify something.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like Kenneth's kind of touching on it, but to clarify, when I said like something like personal experience could be evidence, I wasn't meaning that in the sense that it's something that I could therefore present to other people and expect them to accept that as evidence. The same way that Kenneth wouldn't, like with the road to Damascus moment, like, you know, he was talking about like, well, this, even if I were to have this moment, it's not something that I would expect other people to do. It's merely, the claim was merely like, if I have a proposition in front of me that X is true, and then I have an experience that convinces me something about X, you know, is more reliable, or it's likely, the proposition is likely to be true. Well, then for me, that's just going to be something that I could put in, you know, put in that evidence bag to say like, you know, okay, this leads me to believe the proposition is true. It's not like I'm saying, you know, everyone should accept it. I'm not even saying that I should accept it based on that. That was just the only clarification I was trying to offer. So thanks for the time, guys. Appreciate
That's
it.
good clarification.
Thank you, Charismatic Catholic. Appreciate you taking the time to call it.
Thank you.
You look like you want to respond to it, though, Kenneth.
It just sounds to me like a way of setting yourself up for confirmation bias. Like when people see something in the night sky and think, I saw an alien, and then they start doing research on Google to find out about aliens, and they're using motivated reasoning to confirm their conclusion that they've already arrived at. So if you see if you grow up in a culture where Christianity is the dominant religion, and then you have an NDE and you see something and your brain goes, that's Jesus, then you go on from there and you put that in the evidence pile. I think it's a mistake. It's a way to set yourself up to believe things that for bad reasons.
So experiential in your mind is not trustworthy enough evidence because it's not demonstratable, it's not testable, it's not provable. It
depends. I talked about this on Talk Eden the other day because we talked in the exact context of a Damascus Road experience. I said if I take, there's a dog park by my house. If I take my dog to the dog park and another dog comes running up to me and I get to meet another dog, I'm not going to question my subjective experience of meeting the dog. I'm not going to make any assumptions that I'm hallucinating. I'm going to fully roll with that based on all of everything that I know about reality. I've met other dogs. Dogs are real. Dogs exist. I'm at a dog park. I've been to the dog park before, you know, so I have lots of good reasons. I've got lots of evidence to believe that I'm having my subjective experience of meeting a dog is consistent with reality. So there's no faith involved in that because there's nothing that I have to believe without evidence to come to the conclusion, oh, I am having the experience of meeting a dog right now. This seems to be consistent with reality. So that's where I would make the distinction.